is your KORN News Radio podcast. I'm Travis Kriens. We are in the middle of a postseason basketball, high school postseason basketball here in South Dakota. From the Mitchell Republic, always joining us, Landon, Dierks, and Marcus Traxler. We now know the SoDAK 16 here for all three classes of girls. I think we know it for the boys for AA. I think we pretty much know that without it being official, and we'll touch on that, that's a pet peeve of mine. Then also boys start here tonight, first round boys matchups for B and A, and hopefully weather holds here tomorrow. We can get to the quarterfinals in, Marcus, because the weather's been nice, except we got 40, 50 mile per hour winds here tomorrow to kind of put a change up into things.
And maybe an inch or two of snow. So hopefully it's just that much. It's not more, but the wind can become a factor. I have a feeling we're going to be covering a lot of pet peeves of yours.
Yes, I am.
During this podcast. So
very disgruntled. 10 days, a week and a half since we've done this.
You're always gruntled.
Always gruntled. I'm always disgruntled. So I guess the first thing would be Activities Association. We've got the Class AA girls bracket that was announced around 8 o'clock, maybe a little before 8 o'clock on Monday morning here, March 3rd. But for whatever reason, we don't have the boys. Like, we know what it is. There's no tiebreakers. The only tiebreaker would be for the 3 seed between Mitchell and Harrisburg beating Mitchell. So that's easy to figure that out. So I don't know, I just don't understand what the holdup is here, Marcus. Explain to me something, because it's like, well, we got games on Friday. We know who's playing. They just don't want to announce the bracket. I don't know why. What's going on Pier?
I don't understand. I'm not going to try to guess at what the reasons might be, other than they're not playing till Saturday. So I guess maybe they don't see it as a high priority. Everybody else wants to know what the matchups are. Everybody else pretty much can figure it out. I don't know. We shouldn't be waiting on any other states, records of any other teams or anything, or whatever the records are.
Things should be done by what, Friday? Saturday's the deadline?
Yeah, Saturday's supposed to be the deadline. So I don't know why we would take it to Tuesday, but I'm also, of all the things I got to worry about this week, I'm not going to try to, I'm moving this further down the list because I just can't, I got other things to worry about.
Well, there we go. So we don't know the boys bracket. We do know the boy. Here. If you want to keep going, let's go, let's get that Orono, Minnesota win up to the 50-point level, because they're 19 and 7, which is a 73% winning percentage. So let's, as long as we're not announcing anything, if Orono has any playoff games here tonight, let's count that, and maybe you can get a 20th win for Orono. I think the section
playoffs are just starting in Minnesota.
Let's count it then. If we're not going to announce brackets, then let's keep updating records for teams out of state. And let's go back then. Let's start here. Class A and Class B SoDAK 16s. We talked a little bit last week about how I liked, the idea of a SoDAK 32. What teams did not make it? What teams that probably would have made it under that format did not ended up making it? Class B, you have the 4 seed Ethan. They were knocked out by St. Mary's, a mild upset maybe, if that. And then you have the number 7 seed Coleman Egan, who also did not win. So those are 2 top 10 teams that did not make it through. You look at the Class B girls bracket, Centerville now at 22-0. They're your 1 seed. Harding County is at 20-0. They're your number 2 seed. Lyman is at 3. Parkston is at 4. So those are your top 4 seeds. Parkston at the Corn Palace. Thursday night, they take on Highmore Herald at 6 o'clock. If you look at the bracket, any surprises for this Class B girls bracket, and anybody pulling an upset? There's always a couple, but looks like a pretty solid top 8 here. Any upsets that you like potentially on Thursday night here for Class B?
I mean, I know Del Rapids St. Mary is good. Them beating Ethan is an upset. I mean, I think we felt pretty good about where Ethan was going, and then as Landon, I believe, said on this podcast, or at least said to me, you said it to me, you didn't say it on the podcast, if they don't get those shots to fall from the outside, they're in trouble. And they were like 5 for 29 from 3 or whatever the number was.
It's like an upset, but also you're not stunned that, they played a pretty good team.
Yeah. So in terms of potential upsets here, I don't have a lot in Class B. I'm looking at Warner, the 12 seed, against Bennett County. Bennett County, when we went through a bunch of these numbers, I was impressed at what I saw with Bennett County under the microscope. So that's good. I wouldn't necessarily say that they are ripe for the upset. Corsica Stickney beat Sanborn Central Woonsocket by a point the first time. That's worth taking into account there. And certainly Dubrook area, Kadoka area is a game to watch. Dubrook area, the 10 against Kadoka area. So, but would those be major upsets? I mean, Dubrook's already got 17 wins on the season.
7-10, no. Yeah.
And it'd be a 10 over a 7. So Landon?
Yeah, I'm of the lower seeded teams, I'm the most bullish on Dubrook area, but 7 over 10 or 10 over 7 is not a huge upset. If you go based on the simulation we talked about last week, your
state champion's out.
Hey, not my state champion. Massey's state champion. I just want that to be clear.
That was Coleman Egan.
No, it was Ethan against Coleman Egan.
Ethan against Coleman Egan. Yeah,
both of them out.
Yeah.
So it went 0 for 2 in Region 3. But I also like Warner. If I recall, Warner and Bennett County not too far away in the overall hierarchy of the Massey rating. So potentially Warner looking at a potential chance for an upset there.
You look at Harding County, I guess, is a 2 seed, maybe a weak 2 seed with that schedule. They are 20-0, and you look at who they could potentially play. If they do get past DeSmet, we'll see how close that DeSmet game could be. But then you look at, who would they play? Would they play that 7-10 winner? If there is an upset, would they play somebody else in that first-round matchup? So you feel like, Centerville pretty strong. Lyman, Parkston, you like their chances, but kind of that 2 seed in Harding County, they're 20-0. You had mentioned they only played 18 regular season games, and it's like, well, how good are you? You're that competition is hard to get out there.
In Harding County, they played one team in South Dakota that wasn't a B team. They played one A team all season. The rest were B teams. DeSmet has 2 wins over teams over 500. So it's not like they have just a litany of wins that would point to them being capable of an upset. And as I always like to look at, Harding County, they came east for 1 game all year. I believe it was a Hanson Classic. They won. So I'll give them some credit for that. That's good. But I'm not seeing kind of the classic hallmarks of DeSmet pulling off that win. Landon has brought up in the past, Harding County got to the state tournament last year, so they have some of that big game experience, knowing what's in their situation. And I mean, it's Harding County. It's a long trip for them no matter where they have to go, but they're going to Timber Lake. A much shorter trip for them than DeSmet. So,
and they did play Hitchcock-Tulare at the KORN Palace. Hitchcock-Tulare, a 10-10 team. They won by 7.
Yeah.
So for whatever that's worth for you.
And just to build off the point that they made the state tournament a year ago, they lost by 5 to a Lyman team that finished 4th. They beat Warner by 5, and they lost to Wall by 9 in the consolation championship. So it's not like they were getting blown out in the state tournament either. I think they're a quality team. I mean, what when you're 20-0, how low a seed can you be, right?
No, yeah.
I guess 4 in the case of Mapialuda, but that's about as low as you could go. So to say they're terribly overseeded at 2, I think is a little bit.
No, I think once you kind of look at what's out there, Lyman has 3 losses. I can't put them higher than Harding County, and Parkston has 4, and Bennett County I guess is 20-2, but when you go under the microscope, as I kind of did, to kind of look at, okay, what are the trends? What stands out to me? Harding County, I mean, 20-0. That's hard to argue with right now, and they got a good draw in this SoDAK 16.
2 of the losses for Parkston versus Vermilion and Wagner by combined 3 points.
Yeah.
So tough losses against some quality Class A teams. Doubleheader at the KORN Palace. It's Thursday night. We'll have it on Q107.3. Clint Greenway will be there. Number 4 seed Parkston takes on the 13 seed Highmore Herald at 6 o'clock. And then around 7:30, 7:45, you've got the second game with a couple of area teams. The 6 seed Sanborn Central Woonsocket and the number 11 seed Corsica Stickney.
Landon Dierks will also be there.
Dierks.
So
a Dierks doubleheader.
So be excited about that. I saw Highmore Herald against Sanborn Central Woonsocket at the 281 tournament. I think Highmore Herald is maybe, I don't remember the exact makeup of their roster, but I think they're maybe a year away from maybe taking another step forward. So they are potentially capable of giving Parkston some trouble, but I think Parkston's a deeper team. I'm looking forward to seeing what the Trojans do, and they've got to be excited to be playing 25 miles from home. Mm-hmm. And then I think that second game could be a lot of fun. Corsica Stickney played really good defense against Andy Central Dakota Christian. They won that game by 20 points against a team that I think, people, we were believers.
I would have picked ACDC.
We were believers in ACDC.
They had some injuries.
Yeah, they did.
Dilsey Brower, not nearly.
It wasn't 100%.
50% at best.
Yeah. So
tough.
That's a factor as well. ACDC missed a lot of shots, and I think Corsica Stickney still is going to have to play a little bit better defense. They are not the highest scoring team either. That'll be interesting to watch in this. Yeah, they're the 12th highest scoring team remaining in AA, or in Class B, excuse me. So Korska Stickney, I think that game, the first time was in the 40s. It was 44-43, and I would expect it to be pretty similar this time around. Although SCW is scoring a lot better now. They're third most, almost 60 points a game right now. So
it feels like Liz Boucher is just in a really good run of form right now.
Yeah.
She's playing as well as anybody in the whole class.
Were you surprised Huron Arena? I don't know what Huron Arena has going on, but
I wonder if they're
matchups here.
I wonder if they're saving it for the state tournament. Just in that the state tournament's going to be there. Maybe they just decided we're not going to have any games there because the state tournament's going to be there. That's not what they've done in the past, but that's a theory I had.
I appreciate it. Parks, you could put Parks and Highmore Herald there. You could put Ron Colley MVP there. They did last year when those teams played. They played at the Huron Arena, so I was kind of surprised that Huron Arena was not in the mix here for a game Thursday nights.
We usually don't go through and not have at least one game at the Huron Arena, and then if they need to, games at James Valley Christian in Huron as well, and there aren't any there. So
I looked at the seed points. It's a 1 versus 16 matchup, but what is it really when you look at seed points? Centerville is 1. Folkton would be 31st in seed points. Harding County is 2. DeSmet is ranked 27. So not 116. It's 1 versus 31 based on that metric there. Class A on Thursday night, Sioux Falls Christian is your number 1 seed. They meet in the middle in Chamberlain. You got Sioux Falls Christian and Rapid City Christian. It's the battle of the Christians. Sioux Falls Christian will win that one in Chamberlain. That's a 5:30 tip-off. But,
bold prediction.
Bold prediction there. Dakota Valley ends up as your 2 seed, getting out of that tough region. They will take on the 15 seed West Central in T, which I thought was a very interesting location between Sioux Falls and Sioux City. It's okay. Kind of a home court here for West Central. Definitely a much shorter trip for the Trojans, 20 miles away here.
But where else do you put
Beersford
it? Beersford is about
Viborg.
You got to have a big gym.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't.
Viborg didn't make it. So
it's not a whole lot between Sioux Falls and Sioux City. So they go to T. Harrisburg, a massive gym. So T not a large gym, I guess, compared to maybe at least Harrisburg.
It's smaller.
He's pretty decent size.
I mean, there's seats on all 4 sides. That's pretty good.
I'm not sure that it is significantly smaller than Harrisburg just because it has seats on all 4 sides.
You got Hamlin as the 3 seed. They'll take on Sisseton up in Watertown. That's travel pretty good for that one. And Mapayalluta, your number 1 team in the polls to end the year in Class A. They end up with that 4 seed versus Flandreau, 21-0. They have to go to Jones County. A couple of area teams. You got the 6 seed Wagner. They have to go to Winter, 6:30 on Thursday to take on Lakota Tech. And then rematch from last year. Again, we'll have this game on Corn Country 92-1. The 9 seed Mount Vernon Plankington trying to knock off the 8 seed Aberdeen Roncalli for the 2nd straight year. Last year they played MVP 1. That game was in Huron. Now they go a little bit farther north up to Redfield at 7 o'clock. Can they pull off the upset? MVP not as good as they were last year without Emily Fox. Reagan Russ obviously excellent. How do you match up MVP and Roncalli with the Titans? Maybe not quite as good as they were last year. They ended up being the 8th seed in the tournament last year.
I think it's going to be really tough. I think they've had 2 really good players step forward. You mentioned Reagan Russ, and Taryn Haig has been very good for them, especially in the second half of their season. So I'm excited to see that matchup. I think Aberdeen Roncalli is probably a little bit better. MVP, the lowest scoring team remaining in Class A, but they have the 5th best defense in terms of scoring defense. So, they have played 10-0 in road games. They have not played any neutral site games. They're the only team in Class A that hasn't played any neutral site games, and they're 10-0 in road games. So
MVP.
This is essentially going to be a road game because they're traveling further. On neutral site, yes, but they are traveling to Redfield. Aberdeen Roncalli, I think, is certainly probably a favorite in this game, but I would not rule out MVP winning this. I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I would concur with most of that. I think Roncalli's maybe a little better than they were a year ago, and not to disparage MVP, but you don't lose a player like Emily Fox and get better right away. But it's the 8 versus 9 for a reason. I mean, anything can happen.
And to my point, Roncalli, 3rd best scoring defense in this class. They only score 53 points a game. So, again, this is another game that seems to point to be in the high 40s probably to determine who wins. And last year's game was 46-40. So I would imagine we're going to be in that territory again.
And MVP, they kind of ran through their schedule. They had a 3-point loss to Sanborn Central Woonsocket, and they had a 3-point loss to Wagner So
and they just beat Parkston, right?
Yeah, they beat Parkston
to end the year. So
and they won that by 10. So
and they also had a win. Let me double check before I speak. They also beat Miller. They also beat Miller towards the end of the year. Miller's in the SoDAK as well.
The odd thing is a lot of their best wins have come on the road, and they've lost pretty much every game they had at home. So I don't know, maybe they are good on the road. We will see between Aberdeen, Roncalli, and MVP. You look at Wagner. You look at Ashland Copel. They would, if they win, do they probably very likely match up with Hamlin. That's a heck of a tough first-round matchup there for Wagner if they can beat Lakota Tech. As you look at those top 4 seeds in Class A, they seem pretty solid to move on.
I would think so. The one, I think it's tough. The one, like if you're the undefeated team in Mapialuda and you get a Flander team that I think is pretty talented. Mm-hmm. I know they didn't maybe have the best year this year, but they have the younger Shepherd sister, Morgan. They have
a freshman.
Who's a freshman. Sadie Ayat is a good player.
She just scored 30 points last week. Between her and Morgan Shepherd, I think they had 55 points combined. And so that's not a real big thrill if you're Mapialuta.
And I mean, that's a state tournament team from here. Both of them are, but you're getting, that's about as strong of a 13 as I can remember in recent memory. And Sisseton as a 14 isn't necessarily a pushover either. I mean, when you have someone inside like Krista Longauger, I mean, she can do a lot of damage. I know, obviously, Hamlin kind of gets it done on the defensive end a lot of the time, but that's pretty interesting too.
Sisseton was in the state tournament a year ago. They've had a lot of experience playing in the SoDAK 16 or later in the year. Hamlin won the first game by 13 points, so they're in the same region. They know a lot of the same opponents. I agree. That's no picnic for Hamlin either.
And then if we go a little bit outside that, maybe it's just, in my mind, based on pedigree alone, you can't be super thrilled if you're Mobridge Pollock to get St. Thomas More as the 12 seed there. That's maybe a potential for another one that I have circled. Just I think could be very close.
Mobridge Pollock averaging 63 points a game. I didn't expect that.
They've been very good.
That's fourth best in this class, and you have St. Thomas More as advertised, giving up 34 points a game. The defense has always been their thing. So that's your immovable force, unstoppable, whatever. That's your matchup there.
Unstoppable force, immovable object.
Thank you for filling that in. And I think there's something to be said. St. Thomas More usually in the past has loaded up on these games against East River teams. They played 3 this year. And so, and I believe they're usually against these legit teams. So it's not calling into question that, but usually you see those teams match up. You see them come east quite a bit.
Number 13 seed Flandreau, their 6 losses are against teams that are still around. So they do not have a bad loss. They've lost to 6 teams, and all of those teams in Class A and Class B all are still around here in the SoDAK 16. So some interesting matchups.
And back to the Wagner Lakota Tech game, those 2 teams of the 16 that are left, they have top 6 schedules in terms of opponent winning percentage. So I mean, Wagner played a team from West Fargo, I believe. They played all kinds of out-of-state competition. And Lakota Tech, they're not afraid to get on the bus either and go play teams. So that'll be interesting. I don't think Lakota Tech will be. I believe Lakota Tech is prepared. They might be scared. I was going to say they're not scared. They maybe should be scared of Ashley Copel. She just had a quadruple double for crying out loud last week. But
that's something else.
That's insane. So I'm looking forward to just seeing how that game unfolds.
3 classes of girls will get to AA here in a bit. O'Gorman, a dominant season. Is Class A girls of the 3 classes the one where there's maybe most question or there's the most contenders for that championship? Sioux Falls Christian.
I think so, especially with the way the bracket shook out.
Sioux Falls Christian did beat Dakota Valley by 12 earlier in the year. They also beat Hamlin by 11, so you like their chances in a championship. But semifinal between Sioux Falls Christian and Mapialuda, I think we're all looking forward to Mapialuda playing one of these top teams, see how they match up, how their offense matches up against these top 2 teams. And if you do get a Hamlin Dakota Valley semifinal, that's probably the most intriguing or the best road we have among these 3 girls' state tournaments.
I want to know I just want to see that semifinal between, selfishly, I want to see that semifinal between Sioux Falls Christian and Mapialuda, because I just think, both those teams can just get after you on the defensive end. That might be like a first to 30 wins type of game. There might be a lot of turnovers, a lot of
71
empty
points a game.
and they're giving up 30. Mapaialutu's, I mean, I realize
Competition
is what it is. They've played one East River team all year, but they also played 3 AA teams, Spearfish, Douglas, and Sturgis. They beat them all. So, that to me tells me plenty that they're talented, and nobody else in this class. I take that back. Rapid City Christian played 4 teams in this class.
And they're one. I know we had questions maybe about Harding County earlier. They're one that they've already proved it in my mind. Like they've been to the state tournament
year in year out,
4 or 5 years in a row now. Coach Rama's a really, really good basketball coach. They're a good program.
All of these players can dribble. They're all fast. They put a ton of pressure on you defensively. So just pedigree wise, and I hate to say that, but it does matter when you've seen these teams. You see what kind of program they run. Not that, yes, the players might change, but you have a general idea of how they're going to play and what kind of defense they're going to bring to the table. So I'm looking forward to that. Absolutely. And I would also say
they're as talented. I mean, they have 2 probably first-team All-Staters in Ashlyn Carlo Blunt and Jodine Big Crow Hunter. I mean, they're really good.
Yeah. I think the one I want to also, since we're going to get on the soapbox here, we hear this campaigning.
Say this is the year for Parkson to finally get to a state tournament. They've been close in Class A.
Parkson?
They're a 4 seed. They're at the Parkson. They're at the Corn
Class
Palace.
B.
This is the year you got to get there. Maybe win your first round game. So kind of a big game for Parkson where all the pressure is on them to win Thursday night. So
in Class A, I've made the point in the past that I believe these games should be at neutral sites in the SoDAK 16. I don't think you should have to go to somebody else's home gym. Not everybody agrees. I have 18-4 Miller going. They're playing 18-4 Sioux Valley. Who's supposed to have home court in that scenario? I don't know who would be. I guess Sioux Valley on the seed points.
Yeah.
Mount Vernon Plankinton has a better record than Aberdeen Roncalli, 18-4 against 16-5. To me, it's right that game's on a neutral floor. If you're Mount Vernon Plank and you have the better record, seed points being what they are, I don't think you should have to go play at Aberdeen Roncalli when you have a better record. I think it should be on a neutral floor. And I know I made the argument earlier that Redfield was a home game. That's not necessarily true, but I just think that we are 1 game away from the state tournament. I think it should be on a neutral floor. I think they have the format correct.
Unlike in AA where most teams play each other, that's not the case in Class A or Class B. The schedules are so different to where, you can be a team that's maybe 15-6, but you're actually better than a team that's maybe 18-2 just based on your schedule. So, neutral sites, and there's...
Well, in AA, where are you going to play in the middle that's going to... I mean, why we're not going to go and play in Kimball, like that.
Mitchell versus Brandon Valley at the McCook Central Auditorium.
Yeah. So...
There we go, Class A, Class B, hopefully.
That's no disrespect to the McCook Central Auditorium, by the way. I really like
that. Great
that
venue. And as I always say, if they built a big enough arena in Stickney, we'd have the state tournament in Stickney. So, here we go.
Class A girls teams that did not make it the 5 seed in seed points per million out of there in the number 7 seed Mobridge Pollock. So
Mobridge Pollock made it. Who are you?
Who am I? I'm looking at somebody else. Elk Point Jefferson. Elk Point Jefferson, the number 6 seed.
And they didn't get out of the first round.
No, they got upset right away by, was it Lennox? Yeah, Lennox. Gutty bunch.
So upsets happen. I mean, I know we talk about what should be the format, 16-32. This is why we play them.
You got to win those games. Doesn't matter who you play. You just, you play those games out. AA girls is where we go here. We finally know the bracket, finally. O'Gorman, winners of 46 in a row. Got to see them at the Corn Palace on Friday, and they get to take on the 16 seed Sturgis. Brandon Valley, your 2 seed versus Watertown. Sioux Falls, Washington, the 3, taking on T, and Rapid City Stevens, the 4, taking on Huron. Kernels at 13-7, and a lot of losses here. 4 in a row, 5 of 6 because they got to play 1, 2, and 3 these past 2 weeks. I dropped them. Talk a little bit about the poll here. That doesn't matter. I dropped Mitchell out last week when they lost to Pierre. You can't be losing to Pierre. Pierre's a 7 seed. I put Mitchell back in at the number 5 spot this week and over Spearfish because of what Spearfish did this week, beating Yankton by 3, a Yankton team that finished 0-20. That matters to me. And then they go to Brookings and they win on a last-second shot. Mitchell dominated both of those teams, Yankton and Brookings. So I'm probably the only one maybe that put Mitchell at 5. Mitchell loses 2 games this week. Spearfish wins it. None impressed with what the Spartans did here to wrap up the year.
Devil's advocate, Mitchell's played their fair share of close games this year as well against teams that are seated in the bottom half of this postseason. So,
that Yankton game was just
I understand.
That's, to me, that's as good as a loss.
I'll offer a very...
That's not how it works.
It's not, but to me, it's, and they finally Yankton beat Douglas 55-33. So they do not end it winless. So
I'm just going to offer something to you, Trav, and you don't have to listen to me.
I will.
Earmuffs.
My headphones are on, so I'll consider.
While you're approaching it from that angle, you said you dropped Mitchell out last week because they lost to Pierre.
Yeah.
So then does Pierre turning around and dropping 2 of their last 3, doesn't that also hurt Mitchell again? In based on the way your logic would go? Because Pierre turned around and then lost
to Jefferson and Roosevelt.
and Roosevelt, which were below them.
Just
Mitchell lost to a team below them, and then Pierre lost to 2 teams.
The inconsistency of Mitchell, just the theme of their season to look so good for a half and then to look so bad for a half. It's just
I have a proposal.
Can't do that. So
let's only rank the top 4 in Class AA right now.
Rank as many teams as you think need to be ranked, and don't rank anymore.
There only needs to be one because
true.
I mean, of all the state tournaments, you would think O'Gorman is the biggest favorite. O'Gorman girls the biggest favorite. They're the best team. They have the best players. Brandon Valley's the only one I think that could beat them. They haven't played since the first game of the year. O'Gorman won that one. I don't think Washington could beat them. I don't think Stevens could beat them. So the O'Gorman girl, I mean, they're very good and they're very young too. They're bringing like everybody back for next year. So this 46-game winning streak, if they win the whole thing, it could be a 50, and very possible they could go undefeated again. So we're looking at 50, 60, 70 maybe. We'll be at 74 next year.
Here he is handing out all these wins again.
Handing it out already. So yeah, AA, you look at, let's focus on Mitchell. Mitchell takes on Brookings, a team they handled easily earlier in the year. Brookings at 10-10. Good matchup, I guess. Mitchell could have been that 5 seed to play Roosevelt. If they would have dropped to 7, they play Harrisburg, and that is no good. Harrisburg and Mitchell, that's no good for Mitchell. So I think all things considered, a good matchup, game which obviously Mitchell should win here. But there's always that question of what Mitchell team shows up and how often, what Mitchell team do you get and how often are they going to flip the switch?
Yeah, part of what I wrote about on Friday night when I covered the game was I think if you're Mitchell, you just need to see some good things happen on Friday night. I think you knew it was going to be tough to win the game. And for the first half, they kind of played with O'Gorman relatively well enough. I think the pace was insane, and it was kind of crazy to try to, run with them a little bit. But, okay, Mitchell can do that. Mitchell can get some steals and knock down some outside shots. Overall, the depth and the talent from O'Gorman won out, as it will against so many teams this year. But I think it was important, especially after how things went against Brandon Valley, those last 3 quarters against Brandon Valley. You had to put a good performance on the board, something you can build off of, to not say, we've been nosediving for 2-3 weeks, nothing good has happened. They got a good performance on the board. Now they have a whole week of practice. They're going to play a team that they know, as we've talked about already in this podcast, team they've already seen, team there's a lot of tape on with Brookings. I think it's a good matchup. I think it's interesting. It's probably a better matchup this week, and then you're going to be stepping into the Lions' Den if you win against a Washington team, whereas you maybe would have had a tougher opponent in the SoDAK and then maybe played a team you'd already beaten, Stevens, in the first round of the state tournament. So there's a give and take there. We'll see how it all goes.
Crunching the numbers last week with the Harrisburg loss and the Spearfish loss that Mitchell had, a 16-point loss or 16-point lead given up against Spearfish, and then that 19-point lead with about 10 minutes to go that they gave up versus Harrisburg. Crunching the numbers last week, that cost them 1 seed, where they could have been the 4, and I assume that it probably cost them the number 5 seed. So that was a pretty big loss considering who your first-round opponent could be at state. You would much rather play Stevens than Washington, and those 2 losses stick out where those are games that you have to win at home, and just huge collapses at the end. So it did cost you something, looking back at it now.
Mitchell has the 5th best scoring defense in this class. That has to be what they hang their hat on in this run in the postseason. And hopefully the offense arrives as you'd expect. But if you're going to hold teams into the 40s, you're going to have a chance, as we've documented previously, or when they've scored 50, those sorts of things. So that's the formula. It's not any more complicated than that. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they're able to get going here in the next couple weeks. With the SoDAK 16 at large, I think, just my opinion, we've got 3 really good matchups, I think, that I'm looking forward to. You got Harrisburg Pierre, the 7 and the 10. Pierre's the 7. Spearfish Roosevelt, we've talked about Spearfish. All we've ever wanted. You got a Sioux Falls school coming into your building. You're 16-4. I think that could be fun. And you just had Aberdeen Central and Jefferson just played.
Mm-hmm.
Jefferson just won by 5 points at home. Now the game's in Aberdeen. Aberdeen's a higher seed. So that'll be it's an 8-9 game. It should be a good game. I think it will be.
The Mitchell girls, I thought, the O'Gorman game was one of their better performances of the season, given the competition. We were there. We both saw it. The Brandon Valley game and the O'Gorman game were complete opposites. Mitchell's first quarter against Brandon Valley was excellent. The next 3 quarters were trash, and it was the complete opposite against O'Gorman. Their first quarter was terrible. The next 3 quarters, I thought, were excellent. O'Gorman led that game 19-5 with 1 minute to go in the first quarter. After that, Mitchell was outscored by 2. So they played with O'Gorman for 3 quarters. I believe the score was 44-42. So the defense wasn't great. You're not going to stop them, but the offense was there. So to do that over the course of 3 quarters, I thought is as good as they've been because they didn't have that big lull except for the first 7 minutes of the game. And
they've shown fits and stops and starts of being able to play pretty good defense against Washington and against Brandon Valley, but it's been like a quarter, like, as you're saying. So got to find a way to do that for closer to 32 minutes. You understand Brandon Valley and Washington and teams like that are going to get their opportunities, but Mitchell's they got to make some outside shots and they got to make defense turn into offense.
Yeah. I mean, if you can hit 8 or 10 3-pointers, you're going to have a chance there against Washington if that's who you face, because you're going to have to score. You're going to have to score some points. I just don't think your defense is good, but I don't think you're limiting any of these top 3 teams to 55 or 60. So you got to score some points. Mitchell is 6th seed. Spearfish kind of going the way of their football team. I mean, on both sides, both boys and girls. We talked about the Spearfish football team and they were at number 2 at one point, I think, in seed points. And then at the end of this regular season, they had to take on Pier and they couldn't get past them. And it just kind of all fell apart for Spearfish. And now it's falling apart here for the Spartan basketball team.
Travis
they won those games, Travis.
Yes, so this is one of
they
my
won the games.
Yes.
I'm going to be the Spearfish defender.
Good.
And you're going to deal with it.
Good.
Spearfish, 16 wins. They were in the state tournament last year. The exact same argument I made with Harding County I'm going to make with Spearfish, that they have 4 big games from last year that they were able to draw experience upon. They have the number 5 scoring offense in this class, 56.7 points per game. 4th best defense, 42 points per game. I wanted to look at the numbers. Who did you play during the season? Spearfish played 8 games against Class A teams. Don't love that.
Too many.
They were 9-3 against AA teams. Did not play the Sioux Falls schools. That's a big caveat there as well. I was a little surprised, but it is true. They played 12 games, 11 and 1 on road games. So more of their schedule was on the road than at home. That's to their credit. Good record. They were 6-2 against the teams they played from East River. AA teams from East River, 6-2. That's good. All those are things that point towards them being able to win this game on Friday. But they are playing a Roosevelt team. They are playing a Sioux Falls Metro team.
You have to win that game.
You got to do it. And then this is the thing that Sturgis, Spearfish, Douglas do not play those teams during the regular season. So this is where those games happen. You have them on your home court. Here's your opportunity.
Show me something, Spearfish. Beat Roosevelt. Roosevelt's 8-12. They're the worst Sioux Falls team outside of Lincoln.
Lowest scoring team left. They score 41 points a game. So there's your opportunity to beat them.
Yeah, Spearfish played 12 games versus AA teams. They will have finished playing 2 state tournament teams. They played Mitchell, they played Brandon. Of all those AA teams, are the only 2 teams that they did play Aberdeen. We'll see if they get in.
They had to have played Pier. Spearfish had to have played
Stevens?
Pier.
Yeah, I guess they played. And whatever I said is wrong. They played 5 of the teams. Mitchell played every one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, my pet peeve is the wins and losses. Yes, but how do they win? How do they lose? To me, Mitchell's performance versus O'Gorman in losing by 16 points is much better than beating Yankton by 3 by a team that was 0-19. So you
played a better opponent.
Yeah, the wins and losses. It's got to be more than
the wins and losses have to matter. Like
they do. But there's no context put into them. Oh, you lost. Well, it's like, who did you lose to?
Okay.
How did it go?
Well, then these 2 teams played each other, and Spearfish won.
Yeah,
then you look at that. Then another thing, the what would you call it? The game situation. Who dominated the game? You know,
game control. If you're
game control.
If you're on the college football playoff committee.
Game control. What happened Mitchell was up 16 points in this one late in the third quarter.
And they did not win. You know what I mean?
Like Mitchell went into one of their droughts.
I'm not saying that definitively Spearfish is a better team than Mitchell, but
I think they're very evenly matched.
They're 3 wins better on the sheet. They're going out and winning games. Like,
and let's be honest,
to die on this hill is very interesting.
Let's be honest. If Spearfish wins this week and Mitchell wins this week, a very good chance they're going to play each other in Rapid City. Yeah. Probably on the consolation side of the bracket, and then we can. Granted, there's all kinds of ups and downs that come with that, but we'll see. We'll see what we might see these teams on the same court again.
I do think it's very possible that Spearfish loses to Roosevelt, given that Roosevelt just beat Pierre.
Yeah,
I mean,
they played last year. Was the semifinals consolation. Mitchell won by 11. They beat them out there last year.
I always say this. I tell reporters this all the time. The context matters. You have to have the context, but this is a wins and losses deal, and so you can't have the context cloud the wins and losses to the point of it not mattering because they keep score for a reason.
If Mitchell played Spearfish's schedule, what's Mitchell's record?
If Sioux Falls Christian girls win the state title, does Vermilion get to claim the state title as the only team to beat Sioux Falls Christian?
Yep.
Even though they didn't make the...
Yep.
Just wanted to...
I was trying to think if there was like a UCF football thing where I could claim it, you could claim a national title, but UCF was undefeated. If you're not undefeated, I don't think you can. So
I like the seed points. Mitchell was within a tenth of a seed point, 0.15 of Spearfish. So that's telling you, Spearfish won 3 more games, but their seed points nearly identical. So that tells you, that's the strength of schedule factoring in there.
And let's be honest.
I think we've talked way too long on this.
We can move on. We can move on.
Yeah. So like if Mitchell plays...
yes, and if Spearfish doesn't get the buzzer beater to go in Brookings, Mitchell is the 5 seed, Spearfish is the 6. And we're having a little bit different conversation. I'm not saying their world's different, but...
Just to your point, though, I mean, Sturgis is 10-10, they're the 16. Brookings is 10-10, they're the 11. And there's 3 7-win teams and an 8-win team between them. So strength of schedule, it
absolutely does matter.
It matters
to a point, but like...
It's a difference of 5 seeds for Brookings and Sturgis, so there you go.
AA boys, we know the matchups. We're going to go with that. Lincoln,
we think we know the matchups.
Oh, we know. It's done.
Unless they just drop a truth bomb.
The word would be lazy. That's what the Activities Association is.
I'm not going to say that. They might have something else
Travis,
going on.
Travis said it, not me.
Yeah. That is lazy. The girls' bracket is out, and the boys. Lincoln's your 1 seed, 19-1. That one loss coming to Mitchell. And you look at these top 4 teams, maybe even Huron at 5. It's very interesting top 4. Hopefully the top 4 make it because that sets up for a great semifinal between Lincoln and Mitchell and then Brandon Valley and Harrisburg, who played last year in the semifinal. Those are your 4 teams. A Huron-Mitchell matchup. Mitchell played maybe their worst offensive game of the year, second worst offensive game of the year. They were, 0 of 15, 0 of 16 from 3 in that game, scored under 40 points. That would be your matchup of the first round, would it not? Mitchell and Huron at the 4 versus 5.
Absolutely. And I mean, Huron is very talented. I would expect them to be a factor in this postseason. And they have an interesting game against, they're hosting Sturgis. I would expect them to win that game. And I think Mitchell could say the same about their matchup with Rapid City Central. But, I think we're all looking forward to that 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, because Mitchell beat the 1 and lost to the 2 and the 3 and didn't play great in the games against the 2 and the 3. And they have the same record, but as I've said before, I think Mitchell has 2 of the best wins anybody has in this class. They beat Lincoln and they beat Orono, but they lost some games that ultimately hurt them in the seed points.
I agree. The thing that I've been going back and forth on is, and I know I'm putting the cart before the horse with this, but in the situation where the top 4 seeds would be the semifinalists, is it advantageous for Mitchell to get Lincoln before the title game or less advantageous? Would you rather play Lincoln if you're Mitchell in the semifinals or the title game?
I would rather avoid Harrisburg at all costs. Give me Lincoln and Brandon Valley, and don't
I think it's good to play them in the semis if you got to play them.
I kind of think so too, and I struggle to really put a reason on why.
Not on 2 days back to back. You get them on that third night.
Mitchell's situation here, they're going to play at 1:45 local time on Thursday if they get there, and then they'd play at 6 o'clock the next night. I mean, that's, if you're going to be in the winner's bracket, that's as good as you can do. And then you would potentially turn around and play in the night session on Saturday. So
Brandon Valley and Harrisburg. I think Mitchell wants to see Brandon Valley again. Their first quarter last Tuesday was very good. They were up 17-6 at one point, and you're thinking, oh, this is
17-4.
17-4 at the end of that quarter, and thinking, all right, there's going to be another game where Mitchell rises to the occasion. They take on a top 3 team, and similar to that Lincoln game, they dominate Brandon Valley, but that did not happen. Mitchell did not score double digits any of the next 3 quarters. They still had a chance to win it. They were down 4 with about 30 seconds to go, and it was a terrible offensive game. They can't figure out the zone. It's very interesting. A game they give up 42 points in Brandon on Tuesday, they lose. They give up 62 to O'Gorman on Friday, and they end up winning. So this really comes down to, can Mitchell score? Because if they can score 50 points, similar to the girls, they've got a great shot to win, because I think they've got the best defense of any team in this class. They've had some ugly, ugly wins this year where they've barely scored 40 points, and they've won those games. So to me, they're going to have a very tough matchup versus Huron. You just have to score more than you did that first time. They've got Huron's got a length, and not really a size advantage, but a length advantage. I guess to me, one of the X factors is Gavin Hinker, because I look around the state and I looked at who they've played. Like teams don't have a traditional post player anymore like Gavin Hinker. And no matter who you put them up against, as long as you can get Hinker the ball, like he can make something happen down there. You just got to get him the ball, which is maybe the tough part. But he's had a great season. He was that Kernel that made the biggest jump this year from a junior to a senior. And some of these teams can't stop him. Brandon Valley, he had foul trouble versus Brandon Valley. That game took a massive turn with their zone defense. But then when Hinker got foul trouble, he just didn't play very much in that Brandon game, and Mitchell dominated around the basket in the opening minutes. So, and Lincoln doesn't have anybody that could stop him either.
He needs
just the two that off the top that are at least the closest to Hinker body-wise and the kind of play style-wise would be Luke Kremke's from Lincoln. Even though I think Hinker played really well in that first matchup. And then Mason Payne from Jefferson. But other than that, you're right. There's not a lot of true big guys.
Yeah. It's interesting because Huron has the 6'9" Blake Outline, but he's a slasher. He's not necessarily
He's very talented. That's not the point here, though.
But they got Anderson Porish, 6'5".
And he's more of a wing type as well.
They got Davis Chasey, 6'7", and they got 2 guys at 6'4". So if you were just going to throw bodies at Hinker, Huron has them. If it's just based on height alone, and of course that's the team Mitchell plays if both teams win in the first round. Foul trouble is going to be important in all these games. It just is, and that's it's just a reality of basketball. We've talked about it before. Their scoring that they get from the big three is huge, and then the scoring that they get from the other guys is going to be important. And how is that managed? But I think we've seen that there's a proven track record of when Mitchell goes inside, they have more success. It just opens everything else up because they have 2 guys that are difficult to guard inside with Hinker and Smith. And so I think they have to try to play inside out a little bit. And I think they know that. It's not anything that's a super big surprise. And I think that would also open up the driving lanes for Tally, the shooting opportunities for Tally, the shooting opportunities for everybody else. So that stuff matters.
And for they're not a team that makes 7 or 8 threes a game. They're just not a team that does that. They can get by making 3, 4, 5 a game. If they do make 7 or 8, they're going to likely win that game. So Mitchell, they have Rapid City Central, likely a 6 o'clock start time on Saturday, a team that they struggled with out west early in the season. So that's another game where it's like you have to play well. I want to see Mitchell, in the AA tournament when the season is on the line. What do they look like? They've got the best player in Marcus Talley. They've got Colton Smith, who I think you'd have to put in a top 5 position. He's the best rebounder of anybody. Then you got Gavin Hinker, who's a post player that not many other teams have. Mitchell's the best or second best defensive team. So they're the defending champs. They've got, if not the best coach, one of the best coaches. You're not going to lose that on the coaching end of things. So a lot of advantages to Mitchell. It's just people want to see, can they beat Lincoln again? And if you got to play Harrisburg, that's not good, but I think they could beat Brandon Valley. Harrisburg, who knows? Well, this would be a very tough road to a chance. This would be the toughest road they could have to knock off Huron, Lincoln, and then either that 2 or 3 seed. That would be very impressive if they could do that. And I'm going to assume not a lot of people are going to be picking Mitchell. A lot of people are going to be picking Lincoln. And I don't know. Other than that, it's Mitchell goes into this as an underdog.
I think that's fine. I think people know the pedigree of Mitchell. You're potentially looking at a scenario where they're going to be playing in the Final Four for the third straight year, and they have a lot of experience in these big games. Think about how many big games they've played over the last 2 years, how many games that have gotten a lot of attention this year. So that helps. I think having some of that experience in those big spots, they have players that are well equipped for this. Doesn't mean they're going to go out and do it, because they are high school kids and these things can go all kinds of ways without any warning. But I think they're going to be in position to have some success. And I think I think you got to get out there and see where the chips fall when you face these really good teams, because they're going to be feeling the pressure of a state tournament just like everybody else.
Yeah, I just looking at more of the bracket as a whole, this is kind of interesting. I definitely think we could see 2 double-digit teams make it.
What do you like? You like Jefferson and Roosevelt?
I think I kind of like Jefferson and Roosevelt,
right.
Mostly based just on how they're playing right now. Jefferson has won 4 in a row coming into the postseason, and they're finally healthy. Like they really weren't healthy till they played Mitchell here at the Palace, and they were in that game for a lot of it. And then now they've won 4 in a row here down the stretch to get the 10 seed.
And who did Jefferson beat their very first game of the year? Brandon Valley. And that is who they would play in that first round.
Go ahead.
They play a Washington team that isn't playing bad right now. They'll come in having won 3 of 4, but we've seen Washington be up and down this year.
Yeah.
Both of their regular season matchups were when Jefferson wasn't healthy, and they were single-digit games. And then I've kind of been in the camp that I think people have been sleeping on Roosevelt and how well they've played over the last month. They come in having won 5 of 7, including just before that a win over O'Gorman,
and
who they'd play.
They lost to Lincoln by 3.
Yeah,
a couple weeks ago.
They're playing good ball right now. I'd be pretty afraid to play the Rough Riders if I was just about anybody, to be honest. And then I'm not saying this is going to happen. It's one of those domino effect things. Stevens had Harrisburg on the ropes a couple of weeks back.
What was that? What would that have been? A 98% win percentage probability on that one?
Stevens was up
90.
I don't know.
Stevens was up 41-23 going into the fourth quarter.
99.9.
And they didn't score a point on their home floor in the fourth quarter and lost by 2 against Harrisburg.
And that would have been enough to flip the 3 and 4 seed.
It would have done a lot. I think Stevens would have climbed probably to like the 12 or the 11.
Papers.
It would have dropped Harrisburg. So there's certainly a domino effect there. I mean, I'm going to say it. Stevens is way too talented of a team to have lost 7 games in a row coming into the postseason. I'm not saying they're due. I don't love when people say that, but it feels like, when you have the Segrist kid, Minka Hall, like they have some pieces on that team. They should find ways to win a couple of games, and maybe they pull off some magic there.
What a bomb
again.
that would be.
It would be interesting.
That would open up. That would make that Huron-Mitchell game massive.
Look at the bottom of the bracket. You could, under this scenario, you could have the 10 and the 11 and maybe the 14 all move on. Wow. And all of a sudden that bottom of the bracket's blown up. Now, this has never happened in AA, and the history is not on this side, but if there was ever a year where this might be able to happen, it could. And let's throw in a 9 Thierry over an 8 Spearfish as well. That's very possible as well.
Yeah, Spearfish, the best chance that West River has of having a team in Rapid City. Spearfish is an 8, and they fell a couple spots here. That lost to Yankton. Yankton at 5 and 15, and that win propelled the Bucks to that 16 seed. They were on the outside looking in, probably saying, we're probably not gonna go to the SoDAK 16. Now they get to make a short drive up to Sioux Falls and get to play Lincoln. So congratulations there. But yeah, Spearfish drops a few spots, and that Yankton win gets them into that. I think that knocked Douglas out of the running. So better off Douglas. We don't need to see Douglas and Lincoln play basketball. We just don't.
Again, the threshold to get in to the bracket is interesting. 10 wins was the 16 seed in the girls part of it. 5 wins was the 16 seed in the boys.
Technically, Watertown was the first team.
Watertown,
by the way, but.
And we look at
Brookings won. I don't mean to be.
Yeah.
Brookings beat Douglas.
This just in.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was at state wrestling. There's a lot that happened that I was not aware of.
And then wrapping it up here, regions start tonight, first round for boys, and quarterfinals hopefully tomorrow. That could really mess things up here with the weather. You're looking at, if your girls' team doesn't play in a SoDAK 16, you can probably play Thursday. If your girls' team does, you're probably not playing Thursday. You're probably playing Friday, Saturday. So weather could be an impact, but it could be okay tomorrow as well.
We did have it a couple years ago with the SoDAK where they jammed some games in on Wednesday, but that's not going to happen this week because it's Ash Wednesday. So I don't think there's any chance that happens. So I think Wednesday's off the table, and I think you're looking at Thursday, Friday potentially if you got to, and moving games back to Saturday if you have to.
Sioux Falls Christian, your 1 seed for the boys, and Hamlin is your 2. Does anybody prevent that from being another Hamlin-Sioux Falls Christian championship game? Because really good game last year. Hamlin did the impossible, and those are your top 2 seeds. So exciting. Probably the biggest 1 versus 2 matchup we have in the state of people hoping to get that rematch from last year.
And you have to remember, between all the classics, it seems like it's a little more likely that we see that 1 versus 2 in Class B at some point before we get to the postseason. Just doesn't always happen in Class A. So.
Or maybe the second best team's a 4 seed. They're not a 1-2.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the true best teams are Hamlin, Sioux Falls Christian. Do we agree with that?
Yeah, I wouldn't pick against those 2. I do think those 2 are solidly, I'll say, the 2 best. Rapid City Christian and West Central are both very good basketball teams. I've been very high on both of them this year. So I think in a one-off semifinal situation, both those 2 teams would be very dangerous.
And Rapid City Christian has played a lot of good teams. They've really put themselves out there. They've been at the KORN. They played Hamlin.
Their 2 losses are to Sioux Falls Christian by 9 and Hamlin by 12.
Yeah. So
West Central, one of the more surprising teams in the state. It's been a very long time since their boys team has even made the state tournament. They're 4th in seed points. Lennox is 5th. If they get that far, that would be one heck of a first-round matchup.
That'd get you fired up.
It would get me a little fired up.
The old history.
A little bit there, so that'd be exciting. But again, Region 4A for boys, the gauntlet, maybe not as bad as the girls, but you have Sioux Falls Christian as your number 1 overall seed in Region 4A. You have Lennox, the number 2 seed. They're 5th in seed points, and they would have to beat Vermilion, the 3 seed in that region, and they are 7th in seed points. So Lennox, if they can get past Vermilion, probably has a much easier game in that SoDAK 16 than they do in that region. Looking at area teams, you've got Hanson, the top team in Region 5A. They are 23rd in seed points, but if they were to get, if they win that region, I would say Hanson is your favorite. They would not be a 16 or a 15 or a 14. They might be a 12 or a 13 because there was at least a couple more regions out there that have teams ranked under 23. So I guess in Class A boys this year, it would be that there's going to be a lot of those teams, 25 to 30 to 35, that are going to be in that final 16. So maybe some pretty massive mismatches. SoDAK 16, 1 versus 16, the 2, 15, the 3, 14. I mean, those are usually games that end up 20, 30-point margins. And, on paper, that's what kind of we're headed towards here.
And those things have happened in the past.
Yep.
It's not something that's completely out of the question, but for whatever reason, Region 5A boys, it's ebbed and flowed over the years, and sometimes this is the scenario you've ended up in. I think Hanson's a perfectly fine basketball team. I think they're worthy of being the number 1 seed in that region, but for whatever reason, it's just not the deepest. And so, especially compared to that region, Region 2, Region 3, Region 4.
Even out west.
You look at
Region
what
8, yeah.
Well, you just look at what that region lost, per se, in realignment. Parkston had a very good year in Class B. Platte Geddes is the 4th best team in Region 6.
Yeah.
Platte Geddes would be the 1 seed in Region 5 this year if they were still in Region 5. There's some good teams that got put in different places.
Yep.
Class B boys, again, first-round matchups tonight, and you do have your quarterfinals tomorrow. 2B, I guess, up north, the big region, you got 1, 4, and 9 all there. Castlewood, Wessington Springs, and Woolsey, Wessington. And Region 4B, not bad here locally. You got Viborg, Hurley, 3, Parkston, 7, and Freeman as a 13 seed. So things pretty, besides that, things are pretty even for Class B basketball. Castlewood and St. Mary's, your top 2 seeds there.
If the seeds hold, and I think Landon can expand on this as well, the two games I'm most excited to see in the region semifinals are Wolsey-Wessington against Wessington Springs and Parkston against Freeman. Those are two. I mean,
hey,
we talked about Parkston and Freeman did not play during the year, even though they're in the same county. And you've got Wolsey-Wessington gave up a big lead against Wessington Springs at the 281, and so the Warbirds are interested in playing the Spartans again.
Absolutely. So we've already, like you just said, we've already seen the one, and that was very bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't expect one team to get out to a 25-point lead the second time around. And yeah, I've been kind of bullish on Freeman a lot of the year. I still think maybe they're a year away because they have some good young pieces, but man, they play an exciting brand of basketball, and I think they're capable of beating just about anybody.
And both those teams have played in a decent number of classics or games against scheduled interesting teams that are outside their normal purview. So I think that could go any which way. I'm excited for that.
You have Howard, the defending champion, going to be in that 8 seed, 9 seed area. I think they're a 9 seed right now, so they could maybe move up a spot on these rankings as you head to next week. They're tied with Wolsey-Wessington for that number 9 spot if it comes to that. So they're looking at that 8-9 game potentially to get back to state.
And they're not as deep as they were last year, but they have some really good scores. Luke Kepsel, factor in basketball, go figure. And then Carson Hinker, Colt Becker have both had moments where they've scored plenty of points this season. So they have some scoring options if they can get it rolling.
Yeah, final thoughts here. Yeah, exciting time of the year. Hopefully the weather's okay, but hey, you've got Thursday night, SoDAK 16. We should know Thursday night what the state tournaments look like here for A and B girls, and it's maybe 4 or 5 area teams get a crack of going to Spearfish for the A's and Huron for the B's.
Yeah, I think the Wagner and MVP matchups are interesting. I'm looking forward to both of those. The 2 games at the Corn Palace should be a lot of fun. And we didn't talk a lot about Lyman, but I think Lyman probably feels good about their matchup with Lemon. So that one's way out there. So we're not headed to that one. But it'll be a lot of fun. I mean, it's a great night just for if you go out to the games. If you're like me, I'll probably have 3 or 4 streams going, just keeping an eye on different stuff. So always a fun night of basketball. And I don't want that to be lost when we talk about what the format should be, because this is a really exciting part of the year, and I don't wish it away. I look forward to it.
Also, you have the Summer League tournament a little bit earlier this year, starting on Wednesday and then concluding on a Sunday. So usually you have that championship game on that Tuesday that coincides with high school boys SoDAK 16, and that will not be the case this year. And SDSU women a heavy favorite. They should get through there. Winners of, is it 63 in a row now?
Something like that.
They're 81-1 in the last 5 years. They're a 44th in net ranking. So you go in there, you expect to win, and if you don't, you might be on that bubble. Just depends on, I guess, who you lose to, whether it's early in the tournament or late, where SDSU kind of a foregone conclusion, I guess. Anybody give them a shot to get knocked off? Oral Roberts, North Dakota State.
Oral Roberts feels like the logical choice. Like if you had to pick one team that could do it,
maybe NDSU. I mean,
they've been trending in the wrong direction is the problem. I mean, NDSU is certainly capable, but yeah, just trending in the wrong direction at the wrong time. I think Oral Roberts has played SDSU the toughest in like just both games overall. So I'd go with them, but yeah, I don't know anyone who's really picking against them. When you've won 63 in a row, what's 3 more in 4 days?
And also they have such a good history of playing well in this tournament. They're 26-3, and there might be another gear left in them, or maybe 2 if they are if they do make the NCAA tournament. They got to step up their game again. If we're being honest, is there something for USD to give Oral Roberts a challenge in that first game? The first 2 matchups would say no. USD
there's one thing, and her name is Grace Larkins.
You cut me off. Grace Larkins, if she goes out and scores 40, well, then we might have something. That could make that first game on Thursday kind of fun. Other than that, the women's bracket, I don't have a lot of drama on the mind there. 3 o'clock Sunday is the title game for the women.
Really, the Summer League tournament on the women's side hinges on, can USD get back to any form of which they were a couple of years ago, where they were competitive, and you would even say they were maybe better than the Jackrabbits for a couple of year stretch. And can you sustain that? They have not. They've lost coaches, they've lost players, and now it's kind of time to get back to that. Can they? Certainly the opportunity. The conference is wide open behind SDSU, but it's up to USD to build back up to become at least a solid number 2 here.
I go back to when they had Plitzowite as the coach, and then that great year. I mean, they had a long run where when they were holding teams to 60 or less, 70 or less, they were winning every one of those games. Last year, their defense was terrible. This year, it's only a little bit better, but I think it's 7th in the league. That's just not good enough. And they need it's going to be really interesting to see where this goes because Grace Larkins is leaving. Alexi Hempe is graduating. Those are their 2 best scorers. And I don't know what exactly they have behind them, but I don't know them. So it's going to be an unknown. Their biggest issue has been the lack of consistency, a consistent 3rd scorer, a consistent 4th scorer who can pop up and give you 10 points on a regular basis. They just have not had that.
And we don't talk much about, transfer portal and women's basketball.
Yeah.
But this seems like a case where they need somebody immediately just to kind of tread water, not to completely drop off here when you lose your 2 best players. Men's side, a team that was picked near the bottom's the 1 seed in Omaha, and a team that was picked near the top if they were number 1, were they not? Kansas City.
Yep.
And they are the 8 out of 9 seeds in this thing.
In the play-in.
Just two teams that were in completely opposite positions back in October.
I told my buddy Jags fan David, who might be listening to this if you can find it, but this may be the most talent that's ever been collected in an 8-9 mid-major first-round play-in game. But the fact that both these teams are in this game is kind of shocking, and I don't think either one of them is really a threat to win the whole thing, but we might see some fireworks on Wednesday.
No, but just given how weird this year has been, I think, and how, I don't mean to disparage Omaha, but they've never been there and really done that before.
Omaha still has, I believe, only 19 wins. Is that right? Yeah, they're 19-12. With all their success, they still only have 19 wins.
Would you be entirely shocked if one of those teams beat Omaha in just a one-off game?
Here's my
scenario?
thing. We've talked about how, oh man, we're due for a year of chaos, and it never shows up. And usually the chaos,
unless it involves SDSU. Then
usually the chaos cuts off at the 4 seed or maybe the 5 seed. It's never extended all the way down. I guess a couple years ago we had the 7, right? Make the title game.
UND.
Omaha was a 7, right? Weren't they? When the year they made it? Yeah. Denver last year. So we've had it, but we've never had those teams win the whole thing. They get to Tuesday or Sunday in this case, and the steam runs out, and that's it. And that, to me, would point to it's not going to happen this year. But you never know. Norms are made to be broken. These sort of things can change. I do think, just to what Landon's saying, it does point to St. Thomas can win this tournament. We've talked about the nightmare scenario of
which means Omaha wins the tournament.
They win the tournament. They can't go. That has to happen, and this is the last chance for that to happen because we've talked about it so much. Let's see it happen.
I definitely think St. Thomas has the best draw.
Absolutely.
Even as the 2 seed.
Yes,
I'll be honest.
They do.
I think Omaha's got the draw to get to the championship.
Yes.
I mean, you got to play SDSU. That's
you don't know who you're playing in the first round.
Well, that's fine. I mean,
you're going to play a good team that can test you in different ways, no matter who you play in the semis.
They handled Kansas City and Oral Roberts both at home by 20 plus. They just beat Oral Roberts by 23 the other night.
So you're not playing them at home.
I know, and then on the road it was much closer, but still it was a 10 to 12 point margin. But if we're talking path. I mean, Omaha.
What if there's not trash cans in the Sanford Pearson?
Yeah, what if they take them all out? I think the upset, handicapping look at this is NDSU can make a crap ton of threes, so that's potentially that they could take out Omaha.
And USD plays that just rough
and USD
style.
they have had multiple guys go for 30 points in a game this year.
They beat Omaha.
And they've beaten Omaha already. And they're going to have a semblance of home court. So here we go.
And then on the other side, UND's already beat SDSU, and SDSU just lost to Denver.
Yeah,
inexplicably. So the Jacks aren't in a great spot.
I feel like a rebound versus North Dakota.
I mean, truly, but if you're asking me whether whether I would rather be Omaha or St. Thomas, I'm picking St. Thomas right now.
I am too.
I'd pick Omaha.
I think St. Thomas is. The only thing that is tough for them is the pedigree of SDSU in Sioux Falls.
And that 6'11" Australian guy named Oscar, that guy's pretty good.
That nobody really has a guy to defend.
Exactly.
Him.
They split.
What about Denver going to the interim coach but not firing their coach?
Awesome.
That's an incredible move.
Soap opera.
So who's going to be coaching Denver on Thursday? Who knows?
Chauncey Billups.
Chauncey Billups. Rodney
SDSU.
Billups.
No, the Turgeon brother that coached
What's the other
the women for
Scott Sutton coming in to coach him.
What's the other Chris Paul doing? What high school is he the athletic
I don't know.
director of?
Haven't looked in a while.
For those who know, they know. SDSU, when they beat St. Thomas, it was 102-86. So points aplenty. Semifinal would be good. Omaha versus I would prefer them to play USD. That would interest me more than North Dakota State.
Yeah.
And then St. Thomas and SDSU in the semifinals on
Obviously,
Saturday night at midnight.
A big thing is Jackson Money playing for NDSU. He apparently just broke his hand.
Apparently.
Wrap it up.
He was averaging like 22 or 23 points a game lately. So he is the league scoring leader going into the tournament. Sunday
at 8 o'clock Central Time is your men's final, and 3 o'clock for the women. CBS Sports Network is where
as you just said. This, as I've been alluding to in the last couple weeks, that SDSU St. Thomas semifinal could be at 9:30 on Saturday night.
Will be.
Not a lot of competition on the TV dial. I did just look a little bit ago, but get your coffee, get your caffeine on, because it's going to be a late. I'm thinking myself, it's going to be a late night for me. So
we'll have the Kernels game 6 o'clock for the boys,
and then I'll run over there.
Yeah,
you could on that on the 6 o'clock start time for that, and that. Yes, you will have time to file and drive. That game's going to start at 9:30.
We don't know that the Kernels will be at 6, but we think so.
I hope it's earlier in the day.
Sources say yes, it'll be 6.
Sources.
Corey Ottlin, Riker Kreitzfeld, put the game at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, please.
Yeah, Summer League Tournament finals Sunday. So that kicks off here on Wednesday with those exciting 8-9 matchups in front of dozens of folks. Then
I'll be watching them from home.
You watch it.
So I won't be there.
Again, we'll be back next week. Looking at a Wednesday podcast next week. We'll preview the girls' tournaments, and then we'll probably be back the following Wednesday, and we can preview the boys' tournament. So that's the plan for next week. And then we're going to look back at the Summit League here as well. So
one other thing I want to get on my soapbox for, you have the GPAC tournament ending on Tuesday. Dakota Wesleyan got beat. The women got beat on Saturday. The deal was that they were going to announce 16 teams to host the first 2 rounds of the NAIA tournament. That was what they were supposed to do. They announced 12 last week, and they're just making it up as they go, and they're saying, well, we'll announce the other 4 when we announce the bracket on Thursday. That does impact DW because they may be one of the teams that's hosting or not hosting over this
That impacts
thing.
you.
And that impacts me as well. So I'm not a fan of the NAIA just making it up as they go along. I know some DW people not real thrilled about that either, so not great, NAIA.
Drop some names.
Yeah. So.
I don't like the Activities Association. You got problems with the NAIA.
Yeah, and I think their beef is that you've already got Briarcliff, Dort, and Dakota State all hosting in this short amount of space. I agree, but I wonder if that's just, we don't want to have too many in one spot. Well, if DW earned it.
It's, again, one of those things. There's too many good teams in the same conference, in the region. Geography. Again, geography shouldn't decide who goes where. So if Dakota they're 13th in the latest poll.
Yeah, and they just lost the number 5 team, and they beat the number 1 team 2 weeks ago.
Yes, they should host. By all metrics, they should probably host. Landon Dierks, Marcus Traxler, Travis Kriens, online, where can the folks go? Reading things about what we've been talking about here for the past hour.
MitchellRepublic.com.
Spotify and Apple iTunes. Check out the podcast on Twitter, on Facebook.
Tell a friend. If you're listening to us, you found us.
There we go.
Other than that, tell somebody new about this podcast that doesn't really have a name.
Yeah. We'll be back next week again. Wednesday, we'll preview the State Girls Tournaments podcast here on KORN.